We know Teoscar Hernandez is back. What does that mean for the Dodger lineup and for the rest of the offseason? Let's get into it. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is a daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us where you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. And you can make that easier on yourself by subscribing and get notified when our episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube like we are here on Sunday night. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. I'm Vince Samperio. That's Jeff Snyder. And we have been doing Locked On Dodgers together going into 7th year now. We've been doing a Dodger podcast a little longer than that. And we've both been covering the Dodgers for going into our 11th year. So, we've done a lot on the Dodger side, but also we've been Dodger fans our whole lives. So the Dodgers are a part of our lives, probably as much as they are a part of your lives, maybe a little bit more on our end, but who knows? Either way, we're all Dodger fans, and we're here to talk Dodgers and, see what's going on with the team. And the last episode was about Teoscar Hernandez deciding and the Dodgers deciding to re-sign and mutually agree on that part. So we know he'll be around for at least 3 more seasons, but we wanted to talk about 2025 specifically, so we'll get into that. But first, Jeff, I pride myself on someone not getting sick, and it finally hit me for the first time since I think maybe right out of high school. So I guess I've felt it before, but I never let it take me down. So it took me down this time, so I appreciate you holding it down.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when you told me you were sick. I'm like, we've been podcasting together now for over 9.5 years, and it's like I don't remember that ever happened. Like I've lost my voice more times than either of us could count in the 9 years we've been podcasting together. And I get bronchitis all the time, and you're just like plugging along. So I'm like, man, I remember what it was like to be young and healthy. But you know what?
I hope I can still remember what that is. But
hopefully this will humble you a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of people tell me knock on wood when I would brag about it, and I never did because I'm like, well, I've been saying it for like 15 plus years now, but now I can knock on wood.
Now you understand the importance of wood knocking.
Yeah, so, but either way, Teoscar Hernandez back with the Dodgers. You talked with Clint about it all and what it meant and what the terms and all that were. Real quick, if you weren't around or missed that episode, you can go back and watch it, but it's 3 years, $66 million. There's an option for a 4th year at about $15 million. All in all, obviously a good deal for the Dodgers, a good deal for Teo. Surprised that it took this long. His agent was probably trying to get him the best offer he could, and maybe it just didn't come in.
Yeah, who knows what was going on. Like I said the other day, maybe he was just relaxing for the holidays. He had all his offers, and he's like, I'm not going to deal with this. And after Christmas, I'll deal with it. I saw a rumor that the Mets had offered him the same 366, and he went back to them and asked for 488, and they said no. But even if they had said yes, maybe then he brings that back to the Dodgers. I said all along, I thought he was coming back to the Dodgers. It just makes too much sense. And so, happy to have him back for sure. But it's it makes things a little more real. Like I was telling Clint, like this was the last hole that the Dodgers needed to fill. Like the Dodgers could go into opening day with the team they have right now and be the favorites in the National League West and one of the favorites in Major League Baseball with what they have right now. I don't think they're done. We'll talk more about that in the next segment, but this kind of means they could be done.
Yeah, I mean, other than Kiké Hernandez, it's essentially the same lineup they were trotting out there for the postseason, and Kiké would be an easy fix to add back into this roster and lineup. Wherever he fits in, obviously might be some other moves to be made if that was the case. But knowing that, it might be kind of easy to decide, okay, what's the lineup look like? Your top 3 for sure is Ohtani, Mookie, Freddie. Teo probably slots into number 4 there, but is there, with Max Muncy having theoretically a full season coming back, Michael Conforto now in the mix, and a guy who's performed well, but hit above average in his entire career. Will Smith probably dropping lower in the lineup like he was toward the later part of the year, unless they decide to have faith in him again to hit higher in the lineup. How do we kind of see these shaking down? I mean, if opening day, if there's a right-handed pitcher on the mound and this is the roster as currently presented, what does it look like?
Yeah, that's two of the most interesting questions are Michael Conforto and Will Smith. They signed Conforto. The money they gave him could be starter money, but it's kind of right in that mid-range where he doesn't have to be a starter, but especially with being the left-hander, if he's a platoon guy, but he's playing mostly against right-handed pitching, that's still the bulk of the starts. And so you can justify paying what they're paying him. But last year he hit lefties better than he hit righties. And so I think they're interested to see. I would guess that the Dodgers don't actually have a firm plan for Conforto right now. I think they're just saying, let's get all these pieces together at Camelback Ranch in February and see what happens. See what Andy Pages can do. See what Michael Conforto do. My guess would be Pages and Conforto doing some platooning. But I don't know for sure. Maybe Pages, if he's in a platoon role at that point, maybe he's more trade bait than keep him on the roster kind of guy. So I'm very interested to see what their plan is for Conforto. And like you said, Will Smith, dropping him down the order, I think is a really good idea, just because, maybe to the extent there might have been some pressure on him batting cleanup. When you've got all these guys, you've got an easy top five that doesn't need to include Will Smith. If you got Teoscar at cleanup, Muncy batting fifth, and then you could go with Lux batting sixth or Smith batting sixth, or you could even bump him down farther. If you've got Pages or Conforto in the lineup, they like to do the left, right. So maybe sixth is where Smith slots in the best. And then obviously if Gavin Lux is in the lineup, he's probably batting ninth, but Tommy Edman batting ninth, I think they love that, because then you've also got continuing having the switch hitter at the end of the order means you have a true left, right, all the way through repeating itself, which is hard to do with an odd number in the lineup. So there's a lot of those things that will be interesting to see. What do you think? Like how many at bats do you picture Conforto getting in 2025?
Yeah, like you said, with the money they paid him and with seemingly coming out of nowhere, not that he didn't have other offers, but if the Dodgers came and said, "Hey, you want to play for $17 million?" I would imagine Conforto, there wasn't too much hesitation there. So I got to imagine he's going to get $450. I would imagine he's going to be the dominant side of that platoon. And, with the Dodgers, the way it's built, even if Andy Pages started the year as a platoon and hit as well as he did against left-handers last year, OPS over 800, whatever, that's still trade bait and the deadline comes and they do need something else. Or if not, then you have a guy that can OPS 800 against left-handed pitchers, and, that suits you well for the rest of the way. Flip-flopping with Conforto, giving guys, other guys will give days off, whether it's, Chris Taylor, whether it's Kiké, whether, whoever else is on the rock, Miguel Rojas, spelling guys, and other guys can play outfield, whatever it is, the versatility helps out in that regard. But yeah, I do think Edman batting ninth makes sense for the way you mentioned it, if you can go left, right the whole way. But also, as a guy who can get on base ahead of Ohtani and all those guys. And, it's kind of weird because I think the way we view Edman right now is very, very, very high because of what happened last year and what happened in the postseason. But realistically, he's been a league average hitter his entire career, slightly better, obviously not slightly, way better from one side. So there's even room, I guess, to platoon a little bit there too, if you want.
That was going to be my next point. That I definitely see Andy Pages getting some starts in center. I think we'll see plenty of games where it's Teoscar, Pages, and Conforto in the lineup. Against right-handed pitching, even though Pages doesn't hit righties as well as he hits lefties. Because Edman he doesn't hit righties very well at all, really. And maybe that changes. That's another thing they'll keep an eye on in the spring. But also then that does let you say, okay, Edman, maybe against lefties, it's Pages, Conforto, and Teoscar in the outfield, and Edman at second base with Lux sitting. I really do think some of Edman's value is wasted if he's just slotted into one position every day.
Yeah, definitely. And Obviously the lineup can change. I think the top 4 or 5 will probably won't change the entirety of the season, barring some, injuries or dramatic, falls from grace. But I do think it'll be interesting. Like if Lux does remain a guy that they have in the lineup, you bat him ahead or behind Smith. Like Will Smith, even at his worst, was still hitting the ball relatively hard, or at least consistently enough to warrant him being in the lineup. And obviously the way the Dodgers pitching was going, you can't really argue with it. So there'll be a lot of moving pieces, and who knows, like there might be one other piece that ends up signing or coming to the Dodgers some way that we didn't think about. And December 29th lineup probably won't be March 18th lineup or whatever the first game in Japan is. So
yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for that. We're going to talk about what's next for the Dodgers in terms of the offseason. We mentioned Kiké Hernandez. He's still a free agent. What else should they do? What else can they do? Make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money helped me find subscriptions that I forgot about, because I am someone that likes to sign up for free trials and then forgets. And if maybe it's $9.99 a month, and don't worry about it, I'll cancel it. I forget to cancel it. I don't really notice $9.99 a month, and then you're 6 months in, and now you're paid $60. And Rocket Money is there to help you with all that, because they track all those subscriptions down, the ones that you're paying for, the ones that you didn't know you're paying for. It's all right there. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel those unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Brings up everything together in one place, all your subscriptions, all your spending habits, and even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. That $740 a year can get you a lot, can get you maybe a couple of tickets to opening day to see the Dodgers put that nice new banner up. Whatever it is that you want to spend your money on, Rocket Money can help you and help you attain your next goal if it comes to financials. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers one of the listens every day. If your first listen, your last listen, your second listen, your fourth listen, whatever listen, we appreciate it. With us going live a lot more, we're not maybe always your first listen like we used to be, because you might listen live here on Sunday night right before you go to bed, or whatever you're doing right now. So we appreciate you. And remember, you can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, all running all day and all night on YouTube. So, all right, Jeff, like you mentioned, there are plenty of free agents still available. There are some teams that have made a lot of moves, some teams that have made no moves, some teams that you don't know what they're doing, some teams that you do know what they're doing. The Dodgers so far have made pretty much every move that we've either expected and or wanted. Michael Conforto, a little bit out of left field, no pun intended. But other than that, they re-signed Teo, they re-signed Blake Trinan, they signed Blake Snell, which may be a little bit shocking, but not in, if you really looked at what the Dodgers needed. And now they are set up with the team. If they have this team right now, they can go play tomorrow, a 162-game season. But obviously, there are still ways to improve, still different things to do. Kiké Hernandez still out there. I know, a lot of fans want him back, and I want him back. I'm sure you want him back, realistically. But what else is out there for the Dodgers?
Yeah, and we know that it won't be Corbin Burns. He signed with the D-backs in a surprise move, and good for them.
Very Greinke-esque, random.
Yeah, definitely random. D-backs just jumped in. We'll see if they end up regretting it like they did. I think they kind of did with Greinke eventually. They did with Bumgarner. They did with Jordan Montgomery. So they haven't had the best luck signing big name free agents, but Corbin Burns is very good. So, it won't be him. But I think Kiké makes a lot of sense. But as we said before, that would mean almost for sure cutting ties with Chris Taylor. And, that's easier said than done. It's easy enough to say, just cut Taylor. But then you owe him all the money you owe him. So obviously, if they're going to get rid of Chris Taylor, they'd like to find a trade partner to at least take on some of the salary. We'll see about that. One of the things, like, I think there's trades coming. I think there needs to be, because I think Kiké and Roki Sasaki are likely to come to the Dodgers. I think Tanner Scott is still a good possibility. In free agency, that's about all I see. But then trades, just from looking at the Dodgers roster standpoint, like right now, and we've been talking about this for over a year now, the Dodgers have 4 catchers on their 40-man roster. That's at least one too many. And when you factor in the fact that Dalton Rushing is going to be added to the 40-man roster sometime in the next 6 months, he's going to debut in 2025. Well, then that would be 5 catchers. Even if Rushing is playing some left field, he's still a catcher and still can be a catcher. And so it seems to me, with them committed to Austin Barnes as the backup, at least for now, seems like probably both Hunter Fiducia and Diego Cartaya are likely to be traded. With Teoscar coming back, seems like there's not much room for James Outman right now. And while Outman's value is going to be down some because he didn't play super well last year, his value isn't going to go higher. I mean, obviously, if he played in the big leagues and had a great season, it would go higher, but then they wouldn't want to trade him. Right now, he has an option year left. So, for the roster flexibility, his value is probably as high as it's going to get from now until the end of time. And so Outman probably seems likely to be traded, and then finding out something to do with Chris Taylor. Because right now, if you look at, they've got, 10, 15, throw in Teoscar, they have 16 position players on their 40-man roster. And so right now, the 3 odd men out are those 3 guys, Cartaya, Fiducia, and Outman. And that gives you your 13 position players. Throw in Chris Taylor when they re-sign Kiké Hernandez. I just feel like we're going to see some trades, maybe like the Michael Busch trade, of getting some prospects who aren't yet on the 40-man roster to create some of that flexibility. But maybe bigger moves. If you're trading, like Hunter Fiducia has some value, Diego Cartaya still has some value, Outman has some value, Taylor is probably not much value, but we could see some, if they did decide to revisit Luis Robert or something like that. But mostly I think the Dodgers are going to make trades just because they need to.
Yeah, I feel like we've been talking about this for like the last 2 off seasons, where trades are coming, and they haven't necessarily came in the way that we maybe thought, in sense of clearing out some 40-man roster spots. And I guess they did, but maybe sneakily, like you think about, Joby Vivas was on there, Eddie's Leonard was on there, and they're no longer. Michael Busch was on there, he's no longer there. So like you think of it, oh yeah, they have kind of cleared out those spots, maybe just not in the way we thought. But yeah, this might be the time where it does happen, because the hard part too, and we've talked about this before, is that they have 4 or 5 guys recovering from surgery that aren't going to pitch at all next year, or maybe at the end of the year if everything goes right, that are just kind of sitting there as roster spots right now until they're able to be placed on the 60-day IL. And it's kind of tough when you have that many spots taking it up, and you have, you want to make other moves, or you're thinking about other moves. Obviously, if they're going to make a move, they already know what's going to happen. They're not going to be like, oh, this guy wants to sign with us. Oh, okay, we'll sign him. Oh, wait, what do we do now? Like, they're going to have a plan in place. But yeah, it seems like that plan in place has to involve some trades.
Yeah. And that's the other side of things, is that with 16 guys on the 16 position players, that means there's 24 pitchers on the 40-man roster. And that's probably, they probably would like to balance that out some, and maybe have a couple younger position players who aren't necessarily big, need to be in the big leagues right now. And then, some of these pitchers who, some of them, like you said, they will go on the 60-day IL. But, there's guys that you start thinking, like, what's Michael Grove's future with the Dodgers, especially if they sign Tanner Scott? Then you've got this bullpen that's just stacked, and Michael Grove is like, okay, well, I'm a decent long reliever at this point, but Michael Grove could probably be a decent 5th starter on a team that doesn't plan on winning the World Series. So maybe it's time for him to be traded. A lot of guys like that you can make a case. Okay, it's probably best for both the Dodgers and for him if they trade him. And some of the younger guys, they're probably not going to trade Justin Robleski at this point. unless it's in a big trade. They're not going to trade him just for roster relief like they might Michael Grove. But there's a lot of guys you can make the case that, oh yeah, we probably ought to trade that guy, and he's got some value right now. We could get something decent for him. And Michael Grove is a guy you could definitely see getting some sort of lottery pick kind of prospect guy who the Dodgers feel like, oh yeah, we think this guy who hasn't played above low A has some potential, and then turn him into Zaire Hope like they did with that trade with the Cubs. I think there's I would guess that the Dodgers front office is at least somewhat heavily into trade thoughts at this point.
Yeah, we'll have a couple more thoughts on the roster the rest of the way, and then talk a little bit about some Dodger player news that happened over the weekend. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. I want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you are one, an everydayer is just someone that listens or watches every day. We appreciate you if you already are one. If you're not one, but you're listening right now, maybe you're afraid of that commitment of 5 days a week. Well, you can up it maybe 2 days a week and then see how you like that, and either move forward or stay there. Either way, but you can become an everydayer because it's very easy. You just listen or watch every day. There's some here in the chat on YouTube. I'm sure there's a lot of you listening whenever you listen to this, so we appreciate you. And remember, you can go beyond the podcast, become a Locked On Dodgers insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can text directly with us and keep updated on the Dodgers, or just have a chat about the Dodgers with Jeff. Usually Jeff, but sometimes I can hop in there, so that's always fun. So go do that. All right, Jeff, we got a question here from Mark asking about Tanner Scott news, and he followed it up with the West will be tougher this year. Need a lights out closer. I don't know if I necessarily agree too much with that, but in terms of what they need and the West being super tough at the moment, but yeah, Tanner Scott would be, if the Dodgers are going to make another big move in free agency, that really seems like the only one that's probably going to happen.
Yeah, definitely the most likely. And yeah, I don't see it as a need. I think what the Dodgers have right now is a very good bullpen with plenty of guys who can be closers, have been closers. But yeah, Tanner Scott, there's 30 bullpens in baseball that would be better with Tanner Scott in them. That's the nature of Tanner Scott. And because of that, he's going to want to be paid like that. And to me, that's the biggest question mark. Like the benefit to the Dodgers is clear of having Tanner Scott. It's just a matter of we saw that with when Aroldis Chapman was a free agent back in the day when who was it? You had Kenley and Aroldis Chapman and somebody else were all free agents at the same time, and they were all, might have been Mark Melanson.
Yeah, I think it was.
And closers, established closers, and the Dodgers have never really gone to a 5-year deal for a closer, a relief pitcher of any type. And I don't know if Tanner Scott is the guy you break that for. So it's hard for me to see them going to 5 years, but I could see them outbidding other teams on 4 years or really outbidding on 3 years. And who knows what the reliever market is like right now. We've seen kind of after a big flurry early in the offseason, the free agent market has kind of been a little bit weird. The big stars have gotten their big money, but then I think Corbin Burns got a little bit less than we would have expected. I think even Blake Snell got a little bit less than we would have expected. Max Fried probably got more than expected. Seems like that was maybe an emotional signing after the Yankees lost out on Juan Soto. But all in all, we haven't seen, like, Aroldis Chapman signed, but he's not still an elite closer. He signed a 1-year deal. I think Tanner Scott is really the only good established closer on the market. And so I have no idea what the market looks like for a guy like that.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because, like, even the word established closer for Tanner Scott is, you can put established in a little bit of quotation marks. Like, he wasn't the closer for the Padres, or he might have taken over a little bit, but he only closed out a few games. He closed out the games for the Marlins last year, but before that, like, he was a guy who closed some games, but he was never necessarily the quote unquote closer. Like, the most games he ever closed out, or games finished, not even saves, games finished, was 35 in 2022. Like, he was never really a bona fide closer. So the Dodgers have a lot of guys like that already, like you mentioned. And obviously, yes, he's good. Could he be a closer on the Dodgers? Yes, 100%. But I do think, like, for a team like the Dodgers, where it makes sense is, yeah, he makes your team better. Where it might not make as much sense is if you come to the Dodgers, I guess it wouldn't matter. If he gets paid one time, that's probably how most closers are going to get paid, one big time contract, and maybe you get lucky and get another one. But, if he comes to the Dodgers, not guaranteed he would be the closer or remain the closer throughout all 4 years or whatever.
Yeah, and that's one of the good things about his free agency is that he's not – this is his big payday. And so he's going to care more about the money than the role. Because, when the Dodgers got Craig Kimbrell, well, Craig Kimbrell is trying to make the Hall of Fame. And Craig Kimbrell needs saves to make the Hall of Fame. Kenley Jansen, same thing. Tanner Scott's not going to the Hall of Fame. He got good too late in his career to consider himself a Hall of Famer. And so, if he gets 10 saves in 4 years for the Dodgers, he doesn't care if he gets $80 million, whatever that dollar figure is. That's the important part to him. I would guess, I've never met Tanner Scott. I don't know that for sure, but that would be my guess, that he's going to be looking for the best contract and not worry too much about the role. And, I love, I'm a big fan of the closer by committee, and I would love a bullpen with Tanner Scott, Blake Trinan, Evan Phillips, Michael Kopech, Brusar Gratterall eventually, Ryan Brazier, these guys who have all had success. I'm sure I always, Alex Vesia, I always forget at least one good reliever when I'm listening out. But the fact that there's that many guys, right? Anthony Bonda is still around. That's why we're kind of saying, Mark was pushing back a little bit on whether or not they need Tanner Scott. And that's why I say it's not a need, because they do have a lot of really good relievers. But, whoever the eighth reliever is right now, bump him off for Tanner Scott. Yes, you just made your bullpen better.
Yeah, 100%. One note that we didn't have on here, it was reported the Dodgers have met with Roki Sasaki. We have no news from that report, and no surprise, shock, or anything that the Dodgers have met with him. Sasaki's announcement won't come for 2 more weeks once we get past January 15th. So nothing really there. But that's obviously talking about the offseason and what else could happen. That's one of the other dominoes that could happen this offseason. But again, that doesn't. There's not too many more discussion points there. If he picks the Dodgers, he picks the Dodgers. If not, if they pick the Dodgers, they give him however many million they have left in their international signing money, and then they pay him, dirt cheap the next 3 years or 2 years until he hits arbitration. So,
yep.
All right. The Dodger player news over the weekend: Blake Snell got engaged, and then Shohei Ohtani announced on Instagram that he and Momiko are expecting child, Jeff. So. Congrats to Blake Snell. Hopefully not the only, it will be the only ring she gets in 24. And then if they get married in 25, hopefully he gets 2 rings, his ring and then a World Series ring. But we don't know too much about Snell and his, so we'll just wish him well. But Ohtani, baby Ohtani coming, Jeff, that's exciting.
It is exciting. And it got me thinking about, with Shohei obviously being the world's greatest athlete, Shohei's wife is an elite athlete in and of herself. She was a basketball player, so definitely good athletic genes. And I started thinking, say they have little Clayton Ohtani, Teoscar Ohtani. Well, probably named after Teo, right? Little Teoscar Ohtani is born in August or whenever it is. Actually, I guess if they're announcing it, it's probably more like June. They probably wouldn't announce it if it was that early. But little Teoscar Ohtani is born in June, and 18 years later, he's a great ball player. And we've never had a Japanese father-son combo in Major League Baseball. We've had, several Dominican father and son combos, Puerto Rican, Cuban, a lot from Latin America, obviously a lot from the United States. We had, I guess, Bruce Bochy and Brett Bochy. Bruce Bochy was technically born in France, I think. So we've had a father from France. Bert Blyleven was born in the Netherlands, and his son Todd only made it to AAA, didn't make it to the big leagues. So almost had a Netherlands father-son. But we've never had a Japanese player whose son ended up in the big leagues. And for all the first Shohei Ohtani has had, he might as well be the first at that too, right?
Yeah, that would be cool. And when you said that, it made me think. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I've never even heard. I'm sure in Japan, there's been like guys that have played in NPB, father
I would
son.
guess so.
Yeah, I would assume so. But like Hideki Matsui, like I don't know if he has kids, but are they anywhere near age of playing, and are they good? Like, guys like that, Nomo back in the, all those guys that have come up and played throughout the years. Never really heard about it. What I'm interested in is, growing up, it's gonna be a California kid, and more so like if it does, not if the baby does, grow up here for the next 10 years, and then do they decide like. Because if you go, you think about like Josue de Paula, who grew up in New York, but then went down to the Dominican, and that's where he got signed out of. And he didn't have to finish high school. He skipped college. Like didn't have to go through or the draft. Didn't have to go through all that process. Like with Ohtani, how the kid grow up in Japan. Maybe not even Japan, because that makes it kind of harder to get here quicker. But do you want to go through the American process? Like I think about that way, because the main reason I think about it is because when I used to coach Little League, there was a couple kids that would. Their dad worked here, but they grew up in Japan. They came over here, but for summers they'd go back to Japan, and they would tell us about their baseball practice over there being like 3-4 hours a day, like crazy schedule and everything else. And I was like, oh man, I want my kid to go grow up in Japan, but then come play over here, because he'd be very disciplined, very good player, all that type of stuff. So that's what got me thinking like, how's Ohtani going to run this?
Yeah, and we kind of assume Ohtani is not going to live in California after his contract is up, because that's part of the point of deferring all the monies to not pay California taxes. So, but I don't know if that means move to a state with, no state income tax, or if it means move back to Japan. Who knows what that means. But probably won't be California, at least by the time this kid would be getting close to being drafted or whatever. But yeah, Josue de Paula is a good comparison. I remember I'm thinking, Josue de Paula from, Dominican Republic and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, and his cousin is Stephon Marbury. It's like, what? Yeah. Turns out this guy, yeah, he's an international free agent in air quotes more than anything else, but it worked for him. And so, yeah, you could definitely see something like that happening. And, then Dodgers have an in at that point,
Yeah. And if it's a girl, then, could play basketball. Obviously, his wife plays basketball, or could play. It's one of those where not every, son or daughter of insane sports athlete becomes, an insane sports athlete. But when you have Ohtani's genes, and then, his wife looked pretty good on the basketball court and has the height, you do get it. You start thinking about that. Like, oh, how's this baby going to be? So,
yeah, for sure.
All right, Jeff, you got anything else?
No, hopefully some big news coming this week. We might start hearing rumblings about Roki Sasaki, because we're only, a little over 2 weeks away from him being eligible to sign somewhere. And so we might start getting rumors about how he fell to, what teams he's eliminating, those kind of things that could start coming. And, maybe we get some Tanner Scott news in the next couple of days.
Yeah, we shall see what happens. The market, like I said, has been moving, but moving along very slowly. The first base market is kind of the main market that's been moving, other than Pete Alonso. So there's still a lot to come this offseason, and maybe some of that will come on the Dodgers side. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to get notified when episodes are ready, or when we go live on YouTube. Become in every day, or by listening and watching every day. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can go beyond the podcast, come Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. Get text directly from us, keeping you up to date on the Dodgers. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at SnyDog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, cherish my device, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.